Welcome to Agree to Disagree, the podcast where two sisters show how you can disagree about everything but still keep that family bond and friendship.
That's right. We're Sharon and Karen, and we don't just see the world differently, we live it differently. Grab a coffee, settle in, and enjoy the conversation. Who knows? You might even find yourself changing sides.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm all right. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Texas.
Oh, that's nice. Well, it's nighttime here now, but it was a nice sunny day here.
That's good.
In Morocco.
Very good.
So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to start with gene editing.
Yes, we're going to talk about gene editing. It's May 4th.
Yeah, thank you for remembering to say the date.
Yeah, 2025. And we are going to talk about gene editing. And I think we wanted to talk about this because of the recent news articles about the dire wolves not being actually cloned, but through the process and technique of gene editing being birthed using some gray wolf genes and DNA. And, we were going to talk about the ethics of that. Just gene editing in general, because there's a lot of pros. There's a lot of cons.
Yeah, we had an offline conversation about the dire wolves, and I think we kind of agreed that, one, they're not dire wolves. It's a new species. They should be calling it a new species. They shouldn't be calling it bringing back an extinct animal. Exactly. And you said you had some conversations that made you want to talk more about gene editing.
Right. Well, when the headlines incorrectly say, oh, they've brought back extinct species, which is incorrect, you start thinking, gosh, is that really a good thing? Are we playing God? And then you think about, how did they do it? And it was through gene editing. And you're like, is gene editing playing God? There's benefits to gene editing, right? I mean, if we perfect gene editing, we might be able to eradicate diseases and disorders in the womb before babies are born.
Right.
We might be able
I did find that there are two types of gene editing. One is somatic and one is called germline. And the somatic is in non-reproductive cells. So those are things that wouldn't be hereditary. And the germline is editing in sperm, eggs, or embryo. So that is stuff that would be considered hereditary.
Right.
And
I mean, you and I come from a family where type 1 diabetes is hereditary. And if gene editing could prevent type 1 diabetes.
Right. That would be a good thing.
That would be a totally good thing.
But I read a book recently.
Are we playing God?
Yeah, I read a book recently about the deaf community. It was such a good book. It's about a deaf school. And I learned a lot about the deaf community through that book. And one was, there are some people that are deaf who do not think of it as a disability. Absolutely. And they think of it as like even almost a separate race. And so those people saying, given the opportunity, I would not want to hear. There are some people. Mm-hmm. And so I think I broached the subject with my daughter earlier, and she was looking at me like I was an idiot because, I wasn't equating this with diseases per se, but I think there's an argument that could be made that if you eradicate all the diseases, then
what kind of a perfect race are we trying to make?
Yeah. And then you don't have differences in your communities like that don't give you the
diversity. Okay. So you used individuals that have deafness as an example. I'm going to use individuals that are born with Down syndrome as another example. I would imagine if you asked every parent and every individual that has Down syndrome and every parent that had a child with Down syndrome born to them, they're like, don't you dare eradicate and fix that. This is my child.
I don't know. I don't know if it would be every parent, because even people with Down syndrome, they still face difficulties and they still face health issues that if you had a choice as a parent and it's not to me, it's not saying, I wish my child had never been born. What it's saying is, if I had a choice, and there are some people that do take that choice, because there are women that are pregnant and they get tests done to show that there is a developmental issue with their baby, and they decide to go forward with the pregnancy, which in a lot of states now they're not going to have that choice, but
or they decide not to.
Yeah, or they decide not to. But I think Down syndrome is another one. I think dwarfism is another one. Is it worth eliminating these things? Should we be eliminating
that make us unique?
And what we consider defects, some people may consider just differences.
Yeah. Well, and you say we as in society.
Well, some people,
labels them as disabilities, but those that we say may have a disability in our society, to your example about those with deafness, say it's not a disability. Yes, this is all we've known. This is who this is us. We are human beings. We may live in a hearing world, but that's not our world that we assimilate to. Or, you know, what I'm saying, it's just the world we were born into. But have you ever seen that show C? You ever seen that? It's like a 3-season series called C.
No.
One of our favorite actors stars in it, Jason Momoa.
Is he one of our favorite actors?
Oh, maybe he's not one of your favorite. I know he's in my daughter's top 5, but it is a series of a virus that causes everybody in the world to go blind. And this is hundreds of years after that. And so every child that is born for hundreds of years is born blind. So the whole world has become accustomed to having no sight whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, these twins were born with sight. And everybody tries to tell them to not let anybody know that they have sight, because those with sight are considered witches and have to be done away with.
Right. Well, I think that goes to the point of it's what society says is normal or abnormal.
Exactly.
And what point, where do you draw the line? Because some people would say that height, if you're short, it's a disability. It's, you know, that.
Well, you brought up dwarfism.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they might not see it that way.
Right.
I would imagine a lot of them don't. Right. So I don't think any of us want a perfect human race. I think that would be so freaking boring.
I think there are some people that want a perfect human race. I think that's a very broad statement. Again, this goes back to your faith in humanity and my lack of faith in humanity.
I know. But then if there was, then our daughters who are doctors would have nothing to do. They would have nobody to
well,
take
we're a long way from having that perfect race. Well, for one, it's illegal in most countries.
There's a lot of good things about it. It might be able to cure cancer. And cancer is a horrible thing.
Right. But if you unleash it, and it's already unleashed, that's the thing. It's already out there unleashed in the world.
Exactly.
And they're doing things like creating these new species of animals already.
They may not survive in our world on their own because we may not have the right vegetation for them to eat or the right ecosystem or the right pollutants. We don't know that they're going to survive.
Well, they died. Yeah. Dire wolves died out for a reason. They're recreating is not a dire wolf, but they want to bring back the woolly mammoth. It's like, why?
Why?
This goes into, I think animals go extinct for a reason.
But, I was asking the question as my daughter, and she was saying, no, it'd be cool to bring back the woolly mammoth. And I'm like, but why? To what end? That's just playing God. And gene editing could become gender selecting in the womb. You could start doing things where you've got gene prescribing.
Right.
I want blonde hair, blue-eyed, female, baby, that kind of stuff. That's playing God. But then she posed the other question to me. She said, do you believe in vitro fertilization? Do you think that's a good thing? I'm like, yeah, because it gives people a chance to have a baby that might not be able to have a baby. And she said, it's the same thing. That's done through gene editing, same technology. So it's okay to play God.
I don't think it's not exactly the same, because there you're taking an egg and you're taking a sperm and you're creating an embryo and you're injecting that embryo. That's in vitro. Gene editing is taking the gene and actually modifying the gene.
Right. But she says at the basis, it's still the same technology. You're still playing around.
I disagree with that.
At the basis of playing God or not, it's the same. If you think about that,
I disagree with that too.
If those two people that got married for whatever reason cannot procreate and develop a fetus, maybe that's God saying, don't develop this fetus.
Well, but if you're talking about, there are different reasons. Okay. Well, there are different reasons why you can't develop a fetus. Sometimes it's not, if there's something wrong with the woman's eggs or the sperm from the man, then they're not going to use those eggs or that sperm. So you're not taking defective sperm or eggs to procreate. Sometimes it's just a matter of the uterus. Sometimes it's something else that is causing her to be unable to carry a baby. And then you can go to a surrogate, still taking taking her egg and his sperm. So I mean,
right, but let me pose it this way: what if it's not a biological reason? We don't know. Maybe there's another reason, a psychological reason that these two shouldn't have a child.
I wish
here.
We could say that for psychological reasons. For a long time.
I was trying to play you there.
Yeah, I wish that there was a test you had to take to see if you were developmentally able. But then again, who makes the test?
In the animal genetic world of breeding, like you do that because you actually, it goes back to like kings and queens, royal families. You keep the bloodline clean by a lot of in-marrying. And that actually deformities and things like that over time, not at the beginning, but over time, you start breeding out all of that stuff. Man, we've gone way off.
Yeah, we've gone way off topic. Okay, so to me, there's two different aspects of it. There's the human aspect of it. Well, three: the human, the animal, and then the food aspect of it.
Wait, food? What?
Well, because gene editing
plants.
They've already done GMO foods, which I had to look up at what the actual difference was. And so GMO is taking food and introducing foreign DNA into that food, like taking a tomato and introducing foreign DNA so that the tomato doesn't freeze or something like that. And then gene editing would just be modifying the existing DNA. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about modifying food, GMO or gene editing?
I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, GMO foods were banned in Europe, and I think that's why a lot of the U.S. products can't be sold in Europe.
I don't, because, so you're talking to somebody who tries to, but it's not always successful, tries to not eat gluten because I have a type of rheumatoid arthritis, so it helps my joints if I don't eat gluten. But I read the book called The Wheat Belly several years ago, and it talked about the reason that gluten is such a problem in the U.S. right now for people, and that we have all these individuals with celiac disease, is because of GMO on the grain of wheat. It was done for the right reason.
Right.
So it was done to be able to
produce more and not have
more
crops fail.
And to be able to feed other countries that don't have maybe the climate for growing, right? So they modified it, but that modification over time has done terrible things to our system.
Right. And and which is what I read could be the same thing with gene editing. It may not be introducing foreign DNA. It may just be editing that, but they said they don't know what the effects are.
They don't know
on the nutrients, on how that would change the toxin levels of the chemicals in that food. So I think there's a lot more experimentation needs to be done before they do that.
I feel like what's going to happen, especially when the media throws out those headlines about, we've brought back an extinct species incorrectly. I think what's going to happen is there's not going to be those further studies. Humankind loves to jump on these bandwagons. And if there is money,
Well, it's not just money.
It's going to be, I think people are going to go off and do whatever they want to do with this kind of technology. I think they're doing it in AI, and they're going to do it with gene editing too. And then there's going to be a lot of corruption again and a lot of unethical things being done with it.
Well, in the U.S., gene editing, like they can't do anything on humans. There's only 3 countries that are allowed or even get close to being able to do gene editing trials with humans. A lot of countries have restrictions on what you can do with humans involved, but they do allow some research. My concern is, and I think I have this concern a lot more than you do, is I think that the military is trying to, and not just in the U.S., I think the military in China and Russia and the large countries are trying to do HPO and HPE, human performance optimization and human performance enhancement. I think there's talk about they're trying to build the better soldier. So I worry about gene editing in that way, because governments have come down and tried to put in restrictions to stop people from going off the rails with this so far, which I think is what's going to happen. You're going to have some kind of governmental control. but I worry about what militaries are doing because the militaries never adhere to government regulations.
Well, no, usually the government regulations are put in place so that only the military can work on it.
Yeah.
And be the first at it.
And do you think, I'm going to ask you this question, do you think that there should be an international organization that regulates this?
Oh, that'd be a really good topic for us to dive into. Just do we think that there should be international organizations, period?
Yeah, because I think the Republican stance is more like just get rid of all of them. Because the U.S. has pulled out of most of the, human rights? They've pulled out of the Human Rights Council.
So I think that would be a good conversation for us to have. Let's jot that down.
Before we forget.
Before we forget our old brains. So when you were reading that the U.S. has banned it for anything human related, but you think the military is doing things, I'm not disagreeing with you, but did it say why? Did it say why the U.S.
the military, why they've banned it? No, I didn't see why. I would imagine just because if you don't ban it, you're going to have people doing some pretty sketchy things. We're talking about editing DNA in humans. That needs to be controlled.
Oh, I'm not saying that it doesn't. I guess I'm just wanting to know what was the rationale for the U.S. to say we're banning it. Is it because it's an ethical issue? Is it because they're worried about corruption? Is it because lobbyists from drug companies are saying, no, you can't go this route because you'll put us out of business? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I'm just wanting to understand the why behind why did the U.S. say, no, we're not even going to research it?
I don't know. I would imagine that it's just because it's not to a point to where it's safe enough to say, yeah, anyone can do it, and that it needs to be tightly controlled. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
Is that
well, if you think about it, we're on the cusp of this right now, but 25 years ago we were on the cusp of stem cell research,
right?
And there was a lot of no, we're not doing it in the US, but that has now switched, right? And it's like you said, probably because more research, more studies,
I think the ban is
more information, more
waiting
understanding
on more
about the benefits of stem cell usage in the medical field. But is it playing God though? Let's just say we only use it for good, which
that's not even
will never ever happen.
You don't believe in humanity that much, do you?
No, I said that would never happen. It would never happen where only good.
Good things will come of it.
Only good things will come of this. But even if it's mostly, let's say 95% is used for good and 5% is used for bad, is that okay? Like, is it still okay? Are we playing with,
there's the argument
with nature too much? Just like with the food, like you brought up with the food. Are we playing with nature too much and we are distorting and destroying ourselves in the process?
Well, that's to be seen. That's still to be seen. I think that on the food side, I think like you said, the initial reasons for doing it were good. Let's expand our crops. Let's be able to grow things year round instead of just one season of the year.
Right.
Let's be able to grow something that's going to last while we transport it halfway around the world where it doesn't go bad. Let's get it to, reject
people that
insects.
Need food and
because people need food and
right.
But I do think that it gets to the point where they take it maybe a little bit too far. But I think the point can be made that is it playing God if God gives us the human capability to be able to advance science in this way? Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a catch-22. It's like you want to eradicate disease, but in doing so, you open it up to be used for harmful things. And so there need to be restrictions in place. I mean, then that's kind of the conversation with AI that's going on right now is like people are saying
the restrictions.
You need to have some laws in place because this could get out of hand really fast.
Right. But then also the more regulations and the more laws doesn't stop the criminals and the bad people. They just ignore the laws and regulations.
Well, you're always going to have that. You're always going to have that.
Yeah.
The only way to avoid that is to stop progress completely. And you can't even do that. You can't stop progress from happening.
No, you can't. You could go live on a desert island somewhere with just your family and stop it. Just completely go off the grid.
You can try. Yeah, sure. Why not?
You could try. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that there would need to
be... It would be
be
good to bring back the extinct species that I would say in the last 200 years that we have caused to go extinct.
Why?
Because animals that went extinct 10,000 years ago, that wasn't human intervention that caused that. But now it's human intervention. And maybe we can bring them back through gene editing and to continue to work on the conservation efforts to prevent it from happening again. However, I think they did that with the red wolf and we lost them again.
Yeah, because if you don't change, if it's human intervention that's causing them to go extinct and you don't change what the human behavior is, you're not helping anything.
Yeah.
They're just going to go extinct again.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that they went extinct, I was reading the red wolves, and they're not extinct, they're endangered, let's be, but was they're inbreeding with coyotes.
Oh, there you go.
So also that's just their thing.
Yeah.
They're diluting their own gene pool. I'm like, okay.
I mean, and that goes back to, we've kind of been playing God all along. We've been creating new species by breeding species that don't normally mix. We do that. We do it with plants, creating new plants by
I know there's
breeding
some
them together.
Beautiful maroon bluebonnets that
blue bonnets are not supposed to be maroon. Blue bonnets are supposed to be blue.
They're kind of pretty though.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at all the different color flowers, different colored roses that you have because
I know.
They have.
Well, I think about it when I buy purple asparagus or white asparagus. I'm like, are these really the color they naturally are?
Right.
Or have we created this color?
Seedless watermelon. Watermelon's not supposed to be seedless.
Right.
And if you look at any fruit, actually, if you trace back the origins, it's interesting because I've done this with a couple of pieces of different fruits. It's like if you trace back the origins of what it originally looked like to what it looks like today, it's like, yeah, this has gone through a whole lot of change. But the change was, do you consider it natural? Because they weren't editing the genes. They were doing gene grafting with plants. They weren't doing it. They were just breeding.
They were just breeding.
Right.
Yes. The mule is an example. Right. The mule is a cross between a donkey and a horse. And it was done naturally.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Let's go back to the mule because the mule cannot reproduce. And so you would think
it cannot.
that would be a mistake. Why would you create an animal that cannot reproduce? And no one thinks about this. Those poor mules.
They didn't know that it couldn't reproduce when they were doing it. They bred them to be a work animal. So they were bred for human purposes.
Right. That's just really selfish.
Well, you can't sit there and say, well, now they can't procreate in those poor animals. I'm like, well, they don't have any hormones to feel. They don't know what they're missing because they don't.
Well, how do you know? You're not inside their head. They're looking around like no one looks like me. Poor mules.
And that may have been, okay, so that was long before gene editing when the mule was created.
Right.
But maybe God's like, all right, I'll let y'all do this, but you're not going to make more mules. I'm just telling you right now.
Yeah. Well, this and maybe that's
my creation. And
maybe
here you go.
That's what will happen with gene editing. Is if they start doing this stuff, then because the other danger is that they start doing this stuff and you don't know, you may be eradicating diseases, but new ones could be popping up.
Or you were creating ones because
that's what I said.
Gene editing. Well, you just said popping up like it's just random. I'm like, no, we may be creating them on purpose because we're doing gene editing.
Well, that's what I meant. Popping up through gene editing, not that they're just going to magically appear. It's because of the gene editing. Was that not clear?
That was not clear. Not to me.
Oh,
not to me. You know the way I use words versus the way you use words.
I think it'll be interesting to see how long it is before we see a story that comes out that someone that has a lot of money has been able to design their perfect baby. And we start seeing that side of it too. Which I think, and then that goes also back to, if they start this where you can decide, I want blonde hair, blue eyes, or I want dark skin, light skin, this color hair, the color hair, this color eyes, that color eyes. It's only going to be available to those that can afford it. It's only going to be to the wealthy. And
Right.
then you start having a bigger disparity between
The classes.
which is never a good thing when you get a bigger disparity. So I think like everything else, it's going to be cyclical. It'll go in cycles, just like the GMOs. You know, we did it where it seemed like everything was GMO. Now I feel like with GMO foods that they're still doing it. You're just not aware of how modified the foods actually are. They're trying to hide it a little bit more.
And they are trying to hide it because you'll see a lot of packaging that says no GMO. But then when you start reading the ingredients and it's got modified food starch in the ingredient, and I'm like, how can you say no GMO when modified is in the ingredients? It's modified food starch. And now they're even doing different words for the modified food starch because of the word modified.
Yeah.
You know,
I'd be surprised if there's anything that's not GMO,
that doesn't have GMO
in the US. I really would be surprised.
Yeah. That's why I shop on the edge, like our brother taught me, because that's where all the natural food is.
Well, natural-ish. It's not packaged.
Natural-ish.
It's not processed. Processed food is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, but it's not processed. Oh, yeah. I was reading something one time about don't ever eat an apple that you see in the grocery store that shines, because they literally put like a wax on them. They spray a wax on them to give them that shine, to make them look more appetizing. But you don't want to eat that because it's literally like a wax. You're eating wax.
Yeah, and those are my favorite apples. And so I get the apple and then I get a knife and I scrape off the wax because you can actually scrape it off. And you're like, yeah, I was eating this.
Oh my gosh. You get oh, really?
Yeah.
Those are the big
red delicious. Called? Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, those are not my favorite. No,
they're
I
my
like
favorite.
the gala. I like the gala. Those are my favorite.
But man, you just scrape off that wax.
Can you see it?
Oh God, yes. You just get a knife and you scrape. Yeah. And I sit there and I'll scrape the whole apple and scrape off as much wax as possible.
Oh my God.
With those, yeah.
So I think we haven't really landed on gene editing, whether it's good or bad.
Well, it has good things and it has bad things. It's going to be bad if it gets out of control, just like everything else is bad if it gets out of control. It's very dangerous if it's not regulated. And that's, I think, where you and I disagree, is that I think that there should be an international body to regulate these things. Just sadly, the U.S. doesn't abide by.
I don't know that I disagree with that, but I think it'll be an interesting conversation for us to have on global world organizations and what they should be regulating and not regulating, that kind of stuff. So I think that'd be a good topic for us.
And whether the U.S. should be a part of it.
Or any country. I mean, it'd just be any country. Like, should countries be a part of them?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So we didn't even yell at each other this time.
No, we didn't.
So it was nice.
Looky there.
Looky there. Looky there.
This was civil. It'd be kind of hard to yell at people when you're talking gene editing, though.
I know. That one's pretty basic.
All right. So until next time.
Until next time. No more gene editing. That's it, huh?
No, I mean, until there's a lot of research and some regulation.
Until the dire wolves grow up and then start eating people and they have to put them down.
Did Jurassic Park teach us nothing?
I know. Seriously. Okay. Well, until next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. That wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and review. It helps us improve and get the word out.
Reach out to us on Facebook and Instagram or shoot us an email at agreedtodisagree@gmail.com.
Let us know what you think, what topics you'd like us to cover, or any questions you might have. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.